There was a moment in Ted Danson's career where everything should have ended. You know him as the smooth-talking bartender from Cheers, the guy who made you laugh on Becker, who surprised you in CSI, and who redefined himself yet again in The Good Place. He's tall, silver-haired, and somehow always seems to land the next big role, even as his peers fade quietly into the background. But what most people don't realize is that Ted Danson didn't just cruise through Hollywood on charm and talent. His career nearly collapsed. He was caught in one of the most controversial celebrity scandals of the 90s. The media turned on him. His marriage imploded. His image took a beating that many thought he could never recover from. And yet, here he is, still working, still winning awards, still redefining what it means to age in the public eye. How? How does someone fall so hard, so publicly, and still manage to climb back stronger, sharper, and more respected than ever before? That's what we're here to find out. Because Ted Danson's story isn't just about fame, it's about failure. It's about taking hits, losing everything, and finding a way to rebuild. And if you think you know him just because you've seen him on TV, you don't. This is the story of Ted Danson, the roles that made him, the choices that nearly destroyed him, and the resilience that turned him into one of Hollywood's most enduring icons. To understand how Ted Danson got here, how he became the kind of actor who could anchor 5 different decades of television, you have to start in a place that couldn't be further from Hollywood. Flagstaff, Arizona, a small, quiet town surrounded by mountains, pine forests, and long stretches of desert. That's where Ted grew up, far from the flashing cameras and red carpets. His father, Edward Bridge Danson Sr., wasn't a showbiz executive or actor. He was an archaeologist and the director of a local museum. His mother, Jessica, came from a background rooted in education and service. In other words, Ted was raised on knowledge, curiosity, and humility, not ego. He didn't grow up dreaming of stardom. As a teenager, he was more interested in sports, particularly basketball, where his height gave him a natural advantage. Acting wasn't even on his radar until his college years. He started at Stanford University, one of the most prestigious schools in the country. But something wasn't clicking. He felt out of place, drifting. Then came a drama class, not a grand, career-defining moment, just a class. But something about it opened a door. For the first time, he found a way to express himself that felt real. It wasn't long before he transferred to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh to pursue acting more seriously. At Carnegie Mellon, he trained rigorously, studying voice, movement, character, and scene work. He graduated in 1972 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Drama, armed with technique, discipline, and a dream that still seemed wildly unrealistic. The next few years were brutal. Like so many actors before him, Ted scraped by. He took commercials, selling everything from antiperspirant to toothpaste. He nabbed one-off TV roles in shows like Laverne and Shirley, The $6 Million Man, and Magnum P.I. He even appeared on Somerset, a daytime soap, grinding through high-pressure shoots that left little room for error or ego. This wasn't glamorous, it was survival. Danson was just another working actor trying to land something, anything, that might give him a break. But even in those early roles, people noticed something. He had a grounded quality, an authenticity that made you want to watch him. He could play a doctor, a cop, a villain, or a friend, and somehow make them all feel real. That quiet magnetism was his secret weapon. Then, in 1982, came the audition that would change everything. NBC was casting for a new sitcom about a Boston bar. It had a simple premise: a group of regulars, a bartender with a past, and a cast of characters with enough quirks to carry an ensemble. It wasn't expected to be a hit, but when Ted Danson walked in to read for the part of Sam Malone, something clicked. He didn't look like your average sitcom lead. He wasn't flashy, but he had presence. He brought warmth, timing, and just enough brokenness to make the character believable. The producers saw it immediately. This was their guy. When Cheers premiered later that year, it didn't explode overnight. In fact, the ratings were dismal at first, but critics loved it and audiences slowly started to catch on. By the end of its first season, Cheers had become something rare, a show that felt timeless. And Ted Danson? He wasn't just acting anymore, he was Sam Malone. What followed was a cultural phenomenon, and it was only the beginning. Once Cheers hit its stride, Ted Danson didn't just become famous, he became iconic. As Sam Malone, the charming, recovering alcoholic and ex-baseball player who ran a bar full of misfits, Danson struck gold. He wasn't the biggest personality in the cast. That honor often went to characters like Cliff, Norm, or Carla, but he was the anchor, the calm in the chaos, The guy everyone, including the audience, instinctively trusted. And the chemistry? Unmatched. His on-screen push-pull relationship with Diane Chambers, played by Shelley Long, defined TV romance for years. Later, the dynamic with Kirstie Alley's character, Rebecca, gave the show a second wind. Cheers was smart, funny, and way ahead of its time, and Ted was its heart. By the mid-80s, he wasn't just on television, he was owning it. The awards followed: 2 Primetime Emmys for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy, 3 Golden Globe wins, and countless nominations. But it wasn't just about trophies. Ted became the face of NBC's golden era, a symbol of quality, consistency, and class. And while many of his peers struggled to break out of their TV personas, Danson crossed over into film with ease. He starred in 3 Men and a Baby, the highest-grossing film of 1987, and its sequel, 3 Men and a Little Lady. Suddenly, he wasn't just a TV actor, he was a legitimate box office draw. To the public, Ted Danson had it all. The success, the money, the critical acclaim. But as the 80s came to a close, something started to shift. Beneath the polished exterior, the foundation was beginning to crack. Behind the scenes, his personal life was growing more complicated. His marriage to Cassandra Coates, already strained after a traumatic childbirth that left her temporarily paralyzed, was fraying. He'd spent years supporting her recovery, standing by her through impossible odds. But the emotional weight of it all was catching up with them. And in the midst of that emotional distance, a new storm was brewing, one that would soon threaten everything he'd built. The 90s weren't kind to most 80s stars. But for Ted Danson, they were a trial by fire. The decade began with Cheers still dominating TV ratings, but by 1993, the show came to a graceful end after 11 seasons. It was a finale watched by over 80 million people, making it one of the most watched episodes in television history. Ted could have retired then and been remembered as a legend. But instead, life off-screen took center stage in a way he never expected. In 1993, a bombshell hit the tabloids. Danson had been having an affair with actress Whoopi Goldberg, his co-star in the comedy Made in America. The affair led to a very public, very expensive divorce from Coates, reportedly costing him over $30 million. The backlash was swift. What had been a golden career was suddenly stained by scandal. But that wasn't the end of it. Later that year, Danson appeared in blackface at a Friars Club roast for Goldberg, a performance she co-wrote and publicly defended. Still, the stunt sparked widespread outrage. He was slammed by civil rights leaders, ridiculed in the media, and for the first time in his career, his likability was in serious question. The actor who once symbolized America's favorite sitcom was now being painted as reckless, out of touch, and possibly finished. But this is where Ted Danson's story takes a sharp, unexpected turn. Instead of fading away, he chose to evolve. He distanced himself from the tabloid headlines and focused on rebuilding his image, not through PR stunts, but through work. He returned to television in 1998 with Becker, playing a cynical, sharp-witted doctor. The show ran for 6 seasons, quietly reminding audiences why they liked watching him in the first place. He began taking on roles that were riskier, darker, more complex. He starred in HBO's Bored to Death, delivered Emmy-nominated performances in Damages, and popped up in unexpected places like Curb Your Enthusiasm. Each role chipped away at the old image and replaced it with something new, a veteran actor who could do more than just sitcom charm. And while his career was rebuilding, so was his personal life. In 1995, he married actress Mary Steenburgen after a chance meeting on the set of a TV movie. It wasn't a Hollywood fling, it was something real. And unlike his previous relationships, this one stuck. Together, they became one of the most admired couples in the industry, low-key, deeply connected, and refreshingly normal. But even as his career stabilized, Danson wasn't done evolving, not even close. Just when Hollywood thought they had Ted Danson figured out, he made a move no one expected. While most actors use their fame to promote films or chase endorsement deals, Danson turned his attention to something bigger: the environment, specifically the ocean. He wasn't just showing up to galas or doing photo ops at beaches. He went deep. In 1987, long before climate activism became trendy, Ted co-founded the American Oceans Campaign, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting marine life, fighting pollution, and raising awareness about the dying state of the world's oceans. It wasn't a vanity project. He studied, testified before Congress, and got his hands dirty working with scientists and policymakers. Later, the organization merged with Oceana, one of the largest international advocacy groups for ocean conservation. Danson stayed on as a board member, lending his voice to everything from overfishing to offshore drilling bans. But activism isn't always clean and polished, and Ted wasn't afraid to get messy. In 2019, at the age of 71, he was arrested on the steps of the US Capitol during a climate protest led by Jane Fonda. While other celebrities might have shied away from the headlines, Ted embraced it. He smiled for the mugshot. He knew exactly what he was doing. In interviews, he said that protecting the ocean isn't just a cause, it's a responsibility. One he wants to be remembered for as much as his acting. And this isn't a side gig, this is core to who he is now. But activism wasn't the only way Danson was redefining himself in his later years. His career? That was about to take another unexpected leap forward. By the early 2000s, most actors from Danson's era were slowing down, fading out, or clinging to legacy roles. But Ted? He was doing the exact opposite. After Becker ended its six-season run in 2004, he didn't take a break. He shifted gears. He started choosing projects that were smarter, riskier, and more creatively fulfilling. He leaned into his age, his wit, his world weariness, and it paid off. In HBO's Bored to Death, Danson played a pot-smoking, womanizing magazine editor, completely opposite from his past roles. And he stole the show. Critics loved it. Fans saw a new side of him. He wasn't trying to be a leading man anymore, he was building a second legacy as a character actor who could do anything. Then came Damages, where he played billionaire villain Arthur Frobisher alongside Glenn Close. It was a dark, dramatic turn that earned him an Emmy nomination and reminded Hollywood that Danson wasn't just a sitcom relic. He had range and guts. He brought that same energy to Curb Your Enthusiasm, where he played a hilarious, semi-fictional version of himself, poking fun at his fame, his past, and his perfectly polished image. Few actors are confident enough to turn themselves into a running joke. Danson not only embraced it, he thrived on it. But the real surprise came in 2016 when NBC launched The Good Place. The show was weird, philosophical, offbeat, and once again, Ted Danson was the heart of it. As Michael, a morally confused architect of the afterlife, Danson delivered one of the most layered performances of his entire career, balancing comedy, existential dread, and emotional depth. He earned his 18th Emmy nomination, but more importantly, he won over a whole new generation of fans. Suddenly, 30-somethings who'd never seen a single episode of Cheers were quoting his lines and debating ethics over frozen yogurt. It was more than a comeback, it was a reinvention. And just when you think he might ride off into a comfortable retirement, he gears up for yet another chapter. Ted Danson had experienced fame. He'd weathered public failure. But it wasn't until he met Mary Steenburgen that he found something Hollywood rarely delivers: real, unwavering love. They met in 1993 on the set of Pontiac Moon, a modest TV movie neither of them expected to be career-defining. What they didn't realize was that it would become the most important project of their lives, not because of the script, but because of each other. Both had been burned before. Mary had gone through a painful divorce with actor Malcolm McDowell and was raising 2 children on her own. Ted was freshly wounded from a media circus following his split from Cassandra Coates and the Whoopi Goldberg controversy. Neither was looking for anything serious. They were just 2 actors, 2 people floating through the aftermath of their personal storms. But on a 5-hour canoe ride, something clicked. They talked, not as stars, not as damaged goods, but as people who had learned the hard way what mattered. They opened up about their kids, their pasts, their fears. What started as professional chemistry bloomed into a connection so authentic, so deeply human, that neither of them could ignore it. In interviews, Ted has often said that falling in love with Mary wasn't something he planned. It was something that happened to him. She grounded him, softened his sharp edges, and helped him see life beyond scripts and spotlights. Mary, in turn, found in Ted a partner who wasn't just dependable, but deeply present. They married in 1995 and have been together ever since, nearly 3 decades of partnership, support, and shared growth. But this isn't some fairy tale romance. They've been open about the fact that they argue, that they clash, that they have to work at it. Mary has even admitted she gets jealous when fans flirt with Ted in public, but they laugh through it. They trust each other, and most of all, they choose each other every single day. Their love story has become one of Hollywood's rarest treasures, a relationship not built on fame, but in spite of it. Ted became a stepfather to Mary's 2 children, Lily and Charlie. Together, they've built a blended family that Ted describes as the most rewarding part of his life. These days, he lights up when talking about his 3 granddaughters, saying he'd much rather be home playing with them than sitting through another awards show. and even now they work together, appearing in the same projects, supporting each other's scripts, walking red carpets arm in arm, not for publicity, but because they genuinely enjoy being together. For a man who once defined his life by career milestones, Ted Danson's true legacy might just be this: a marriage that survived the chaos of fame and grew into something beautiful, rooted, and enduring. If you ask most actors, the end goal is usually retirement, quiet nights, fewer flights, less pressure. But Ted Danson doesn't seem to believe in endings. At 76, he's not only still working, he's pushing himself harder than ever. After The Good Place wrapped in 2020, most thought he'd slow down. That show had been a critical darling, and he'd earned rave reviews for playing Michael, the mysterious, ethically conflicted architect of the afterlife. He could have left the stage on a high note. Instead, he signed on for more. In 2021, he reunited with Tina Fey and Robert Carlock, creators of 30 Rock, to star in Mr. Mayor, a political satire about an aging businessman who unexpectedly becomes the mayor of Los Angeles. The show had a quirky tone and big expectations, and while it only lasted 2 seasons, it showcased something important. Danson still had it. Not just the timing, not just the presence, but the energy, the willingness to evolve. In 2024, he made a bold pivot again, this time to Netflix, starring in A Man on the Inside, a slow-burn mystery comedy where he plays a retired intelligence officer running a small-town bookstore with a suspiciously large number of secrets. It's a departure from his typical roles, but it works, and it's already been renewed for a 2nd season. Critics have called his performance quietly commanding, deceptively layered, and yet another reinvention in a career full of them. And he's not stopping. He continues to lend his voice to environmental causes. He's been arrested in peaceful protests, spoken on Capitol Hill, and written books about ocean conservation. When younger stars ask him for advice, he doesn't talk about agents or auditions. He talks about purpose, about balance, about staying curious. In public appearances, he's often asked if he has any regrets. He always gives the same answer: no. Because every failure taught him something. Every mistake carved out a new version of himself. Every detour led him here to a life that isn't perfect, but is deeply, profoundly fulfilling. He doesn't claim to have all the answers, but he does know what matters now: love, service, honesty, and growth. So, is this his final act? Probably not. Because if there's one thing Ted Danson has shown us over 5 decades in the spotlight, it's that he doesn't follow the script. He rewrites it. Ted Danson's story is one of the most quietly remarkable in Hollywood. Not because he was the biggest star, not because he always made the right choices, but because he did what few in the industry ever truly manage. He changed. He adapted. He grew. He started as the charming bartender we all wanted to grab a drink with. But over time, he became something far more complex, a symbol of second chances, personal responsibility, and reinvention. Yes, he made mistakes, big ones, public ones. But instead of hiding from them, he owned them. And more importantly, he learned from them. He didn't let scandal define him. He didn't let fame consume him. He found his way back through better roles, a better relationship, and a better understanding of what really matters. He's been a leading man, a punchline, a political protester, and a grandfather. He's played gods, doctors, detectives, and morally confused demons. But through it all, he's remained grounded, curious, passionate, and deeply human. For younger viewers, he's the guy from The Good Place, funny, wise, and just a little mischievous. For older generations, he'll always be Sam Malone. But for those who've watched the full arc, Ted Danson is something else entirely. Proof that redemption is possible, that growth is real, and that legacy isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. So the next time you see his name in the credits, remember, he's not just acting. He's still evolving, still pushing, still proving that sometimes the most impressive role of all is the one you grow into over time. If Ted Danson's story surprised you or gave you a new perspective on what it means to grow, fail, and still come out on top, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want more deep dives into the lives of iconic stars who've stood the test of time, make sure to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Got a favorite Ted Danson role we didn't cover? Or a Hollywood comeback story you think deserves the spotlight? Drop it in the comments. We read every one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.